Welcome back to Final Sector, guys. This is our Imola Grand Prix preview. So this is our first European race. So usually it's a big string of European races, but I think from here we go straight to Miami. But that's fine. Yes. The one thing it does have going for it is it's the first weekend we have our sprint race, which I think is going to be interesting at a track like this. But I wanted to touch on the new sprint format. I know we've talked about it a little bit in previous episodes, but I think it's last year when they trialed it, it was only the top 3 that got points. It's now the top 8. I think it's gonna play a much bigger part in the overall weekend. So I'm curious to know what do you expect it to bring maybe some chaos or some maybe some teams will try a bit harder for those points, or do you think it'll probably fall into a bit more like last year's where it's like it's we'll just follow a train and go through. I'm curious to see what your thoughts are on it. So,
it's hard to say because I mean you could argue that yes, last year unless you're really fighting for the top 3 points wise, there was no point gunning your heart out, but you still were kind of, you could have pushed a bit hard to make a place to then start one place further up on the grid, which is sometimes worth its weight in gold at some circuits, right?
Yep.
I mean, we've seen previously here that cars can fight decent enough. I will say that, again, it's another variable that they haven't had a sprint race here, so it's kind of tricky to see how it plays out, rather than if we were back at, if we were back at Brazil, well, then we could say, oh, well, actually, with how easy it was to pass there, maybe everyone will go wild, but now we're like, I mean, when they announced these changes, I mean, I was in favor of it, and I think, again, even if maybe if you're in a lower place team and you've kind of had a good start, then maybe it means you're going to push really hard just to hold on to it. You don't have to worry about having to defend for a whole race distance to hold on to an 8th or a 7th. So from that perspective, maybe someone like an Aston Martin and Williams could actually see this as a nice way to get a little win. True. Yeah, whether it'll change the show, I'm not sure, but I'm certainly for it. And I've never been that much of a critic of a sprint race, and I'm excited to see it's come back. It's kind of snuck up on me. I didn't really realize we were having one until people started talking about it. I went, oh, we're having the first one, so that's right. Kind of nice. So I'm looking forward to it anyway.
Yeah. I think especially with how the midfield is the battle is at the moment. Again, we talked about it in the race, the Australian race breakdown, where it's sort of like back and forth, like how some teams, we saw Haas, they were right at the front and then they sort of drop back a little bit, like the variable in terms of even things like setup and how the track actually works for the car, because it's so close in that midfield. I think having those extra points all the way down to 8th, even though it is only the 1 point, like it's 8 points to 1 point on a sliding scale if you weren't aware, but so having the sort of the front of the midfield, there's a little more incentive to sort of get there. Obviously, you've still got the benefit of starting in that position for the race. So if you qualified a bit lower, then you've still got that benefit. But the benefit of the championship points is just another incentive on top of that. So I think maybe potentially less so for, again, the top drivers. But yeah, definitely that sort of upper midfield. I think that could pose some interesting questions for some teams and some drivers. So yeah, I'm exciting to see how it plays out, especially at a track like Imola, which is in itself still a little bit of an unknown because we've only had the 1 year back, and that was it was an interesting race, sort of wet to dry, and it was a bit.
Was it just the 1 year? Or did we have 2 years there now?
Oh, it might be 2.
I think we've had it for 2 years now, but again, it's the first. Yeah, you say
maybe I only remember the last year. Maybe I only remember last year.
Yeah, because last year was so chaotic, wasn't it? Yeah.
I don't remember the 2020 race then at all. So maybe that doesn't bode well. Anyway, let's move on.
It's kind of you kind of blend the two as well in your memory, but still, it's Imola with the new regs, and they were kind of saying that Imola should be even more exciting with the new regulations. It should fit these cars. So we've already had 2 amazing races. I can say that much about them. So happy to be going back there anyway.
Yeah, 100%. So obviously the first home race for Ferrari, where Ferrari is now a championship contending team and the favourites. So I think you said in one of the previous videos that you'll see a lot of red there, probably more so than usual.
I said in several videos, I realized. I've mentioned it a lot.
Yeah, the Tifosi are going to be in droves there, so I think that's going to be one exciting one for them, for sure. It's been a long time since they've had a Ferrari genuine on pace this early in the season to properly contend, so hopefully it doesn't happen like what was it 2017 or 18 where they
It
had a
was
really
2
fast car
years
and
where
then
yeah,
they
Vettel
dipped.
started all right, and then
Yeah.
by the time they got to Monza, he was kind of slipping back by then, and it was like, ah.
Fingers crossed that doesn't happen again.
Yeah.
But yeah, speaking of some of the teams, upgrades have been a big talking point because apparently a lot of teams tend to bring their first major upgrade to the first European race of the season. That's what I think Otmar was saying that about Alpine. It's like, yeah, that's a pretty common thing. Is like the first European race, that's when they bring their major upgrades. And in saying that, Alpine do plan to bring some significant aero upgrades for their car for the first race. Red Bull also are planning to bring some upgrades, but Ferrari have opted not to due to the fact that it is a sprint weekend. I might have mentioned this very briefly in the podcast, but yeah, they're not planning on bringing upgrades at all, just because of the fact that there's only really one practice session before you have qualifying, and then the second practice session on the Saturday. You've really got one practice session before you really need to hook stuff together for a flying lap. And they're like, that's not enough time to test and correlate and make sure.
It's not enough time to get ready for a flying lap, let alone anything else.
Yeah, it's enough to get used to how the track operates with these cars, and that's it. So them thinking, an upgrade, it's like, wow, it's a bit risky to bring it to find out, and and then if the upgrade fails, or we spend too much time in the garage, fiddling around with it, or it causes a crash, in worst case scenario, the upgrade or something causes a failure, and then they don't get out for the session at all, and then they potentially miss qualifying. That's catastrophic. So, I think they've got a solid enough car as it is right now that they don't need to risk bringing that upgrade for this race. So,
yeah, you would think that any teams that are bringing them are likely to be almost like just like a direct evolution they might have been planning after testing anyway, almost like a safe kind of upgrade, rather than maybe something like that they're taking a sidestep on to test. Any team maybe trying to experiment, you'd think this is not the time to do it, but there's a few teams where we saw a few kind of startings of things that when we got to Bahrain, but they haven't been able to actually evolve on that now. So if they are adding a few things, they're probably pretty confident that it's not going to cause chaos.
True. Yeah, that's a good point. I guess Ferrari at this point are looking for more the performance improvements rather than trying to find performance. They're trying to improve their base.
We've heard murmurs that overall they're trying to bring like a second kind of bigger version of their car forward, and they're not really in a rush to do it. And rather than, as you say, try to funnel these little packages, they go, well, no, we're just going to go bigger picture and take our time because we have the beauty of doing that, and then we can push it through with confidence later on. Yeah, cool. The one thing I did read just before this is that apparently, but we talked briefly about how with Charles sort of running away with it compared to Carlos, how we think maybe it could be them favouring Charles over Carlos in the team, but Binotto has come out and said it's still too early for the team orders at Ferrari, so they're still backing Carlos for now to sort of hold his own and fight. They're not gonna tell Carlos to step aside for Charles right now, but I think it's very much the next sort of 2 or 3 races he needs to show what he's worth. Otherwise, he will very quickly slip into that number 2 position. So I think, depending on what happens, I think at the championship too, I think they have the beauty where, let's say, Leclerc's up on top and Max is right behind him, and maybe
similar to last year.
They're not going to say, hey, Sainz, stay out there and be a blocker like Checo was in. If you think about France, they're going to go, well, no, don't worry about that.
Or even Abu Dhabi, the last one where he
exactly
held off
good example. And he was happy to do that, but they're saying they're not, even if that comes up, they're not going to really hurt him potentially 1, 2, 3 or more places just to help Charles win out the championship. They would, that scenario. No, we're okay for now. Or who knows, maybe Sainz will be up there and then this is his fight back.
Maybe. I mean, if this is a great chance for him in front of the Tifosi home crowd to show actually no, he can bring this Ferrari team to pure dominance. So it's a great opportunity for him. I obviously, we hope he does very well. He had a bit of a disaster of an Australian weekend, so he I think for his confidence, he needs to bounce back from that. So
and he knows he's got it. I mean,
of course.
even hearing a lot of the talk out of Melbourne now, being, almost 2 weeks out of it now, and there's still things coming up. We're going, oh yeah, there's also this little issue. Oh yeah, there's also that little thing. And I was some things I'm still learning, going, wow, there actually was a lot more, and I didn't give him enough credit. I think I was a bit harsh on him during our review without realizing the scale of what was going on. And to his credit, he came out afterwards and says, probably in the media, in his own mindset, he did manage Pauline to reflect on it. From that as well, good on him. So he
does seem to be pretty hard on himself. He has these really high expectations and a high bar set in Charles at the moment. So that's the bar he wants to be at, that level or above. He's been given a card that is championship quality, and at the moment he's falling in terms of that pace to Charles and that sort of composure and that mentality, I guess, side of things. So, he's very hard on himself, and I think he will. It's hopefully going to make him a better driver. So, but we'll see. I think, like I said, this is a great weekend to test for that. But enough of that. Let's go into our predictions for the weekend. As you said before we recorded, we've got 3 predictions this weekend. With the the sprint race. So we've got who will get pole, who will win the sprint, and who will win the race. We'll touch on our scores so far. I've made a outstanding comeback by picking Charles for Australia. So we're currently sitting. Pick. Yeah, wow, it's the right pick. So 2-2 at the moment we're sitting at. So we're right in it. Remember to play along at home. It's I don't know, bit of fun, but. Let's go with who we think will get pole position. And you went first last time, so I guess I'll throw my prediction out there.
For qualifying pole position. Yeah.
Qualifying, yes. Yeah, I don't think they're calling it sprint qualifying.
They changed the terminology, so. I just couldn't remember how. So
I think they're just calling it the sprint, or people are still calling it the sprint race. Just the sprint. Just call it the fucking sprint race. So
and in the record books, I think now if you get pole and qualifying, it counts.
That's what it counts as. Yeah,
because I had that year of 3 races where the records are different.
Yeah, I had the rant about that, and then you joined in on the rant. Yeah, that was a good video. I like that one. But yeah, so for qualifying pole, I've gone Charles again. I think he's so confident in that car over 1 lap, and I think he sort of feeds off a lot of that energy, and coming to Imola with Tifosi, I think that will just elevate him to another level again, and he'll be able to pull out just an incredible lap to get the pole position for qualifying. So, going with Charles. Ooh, wow, big surprise. Ooh, I'm spicy. Who have you gone with?
All right, so I'm going to go with something different for the sake of just trying to be different. I was thinking one of these 3 I have to stray from the standard, right? And actually not just end this podcast in 30 seconds. Hey, how you going?
Yeah. Yep.
I think, all right, few factors at play that I really want to quickly mention.
Yeah, go.
I didn't realize that in qualifying in Melbourne, how close Max and Scholl were until basically the second last corner, and seeing the review I realized that they were basically neck and neck until that second last corner, and Max just stuffed it up enough to which generated that gap. And that first change rewind, because even in our review, when we kind of said, oh, Charles just went out there and just dominated the lap, and went, well, actually, they were side by side through the whole way, and if you consider how far off that Red Bull was,
I think that was set up as well. Like, a lot of that they said was set up because they were protecting... I think they said they were protecting the rear tires, but it turns out during the race, the front tires were the ones that were graining.
Yes.
So
they went the wrong way too.
Yeah, they went the wrong way, and I think that's what was hurting them in that third sector. So
yeah. So I wanted to mention that, but the driver I'm going to pick is not from that team.
Wow.
So I am going to say that I think
Lando Norris,
Carlos Sainz will get the pole.
Wow, he's going to bounce
Lando,
back.
I did briefly consider, because last year he had that cracker lap before he cacked it, but I just don't think the McLaren is up there enough to get that. You could argue someone like Alonso again, considering that cracker consistency, but I just think air. But I think, look, yes, after all the ranting I did about Sainz going, and the pressure isn't hacking and that, but I think over qualifying he has been nearly there, and I think after a weekend like he had last weekend, I just feel like this quali might be one, if he's going to get in any and I want to pick him for one of them, then I'm going to pick him here, and again, I want to go for something a bit different, so I'm going to put my money on Sainz for the qualifying.
Interesting, okay. I think it has a very good shot of being a very, very, very close qualifying at the top.
Oh, yes.
I think it could be one to watch. So, all right, well, let's move on to who we think will win the sprint race, which it's like is it half distance? I forget exactly.
Quarter. It's around
quarter or third, something like that. Yeah. So
I think it is just a quarter.
Is it just quarter
distance?
distance?
They can ensure there's no pit stops or anything. Like you
Gotcha.
can go. I think you can go the softest, or you can go any tire. But most of them, they try to balance it so the soft is kind of gonna start to go off, and the medium starts to go on as they get to the end, I believe.
Right. Okay. So who do we think will get the sprint race win? Kyle, your thoughts?
Well, I said I was going to make one bold call, and then I've gone back to maybe the standard call here. I've gone with your boy, the Monegasque Leclerc.
Okay. Yep.
I just think let's be honest, in race form, I expect him to start P2, let's be real. And then I expect in race form, I think on the start, he'll just have the edge. I think we might get a nice fight there, but I just feel like, yes, this is a shorter race, but I just see him, at the start. He just seems at the start of a race to be at his best as well. So I feel like he's going to make a move somewhere and then keep it from there for the sprint.
Fair enough. I've gone with Max. I think.
Oh, good on ya!
I think with the sprint races we saw last year, he was ultra aggressive on that opening lap. And I know
Silverstone.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah. But he pulled it off the first time. The second time didn't. He tried to do a similar thing, but yeah, But I think he is just he will be ultra aggressive on that opening lap to be able to get out in front. Especially in that sprint, I think him knowing that there's less time and less kilometers to do things means he'll be that little bit more aggressive and maybe send something that. Maybe he would be slightly more patient for. And I say slightly, and I'm talking slightly more patient for in the race, like in a full-length race. But I could absolutely see, Max starting P2, Charles starting P1 for the sprint race, and Max either by virtue of getting just a really good start or, into that first proper corner, like it's the chicane.
Flashbacks
really,
of last year, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, with Hamilton, I could absolutely see him just sort of sending it and just sort of pushing him off, pushing Charles off, and getting into the lead there, and then holding him off enough to win the sprint. So I could absolutely see Max winning that one for sure. I could see Charles or Carlos winning that as well, or Perez for that matter. But I'm gonna go with Max. I think he's got that aggressive style suited for that shorter form race. So
good call. I like it.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's move on to the full race winner then. Who do we think will win the big boy race on the Sunday?
I believe you can go for this one first.
I will go first, and I've gone back to good old Charlie Leclerc. So, again, over the full length distance, I think he's just got the temperament right now, and the car underneath him, to be able to, even if he does start P2 or whatever behind Max, I think that Ferrari and Charles, it's just a perfect mix right now, and he'll be able to take that win. Maybe not comfortably, but I do think he'll be able to get back to take the win in the end. So
Yes, I copy paste my sentiments that I said before for the sprint race in race form. And I mean, even when strategy comes into play, I think in a race where you can have to deal on the fly with virtual safety cars or incidents, or potentially, I haven't looked at the weather radar. We probably should look at the weather if we're looking ahead to the track, but sometimes it can be so unreliable. I mean, where's that 40% Melbourne rain every day, huh? There was 0% there.
Well, if you watch the broadcast, then you listen to the Sky Sports and they're like, oh, it could rain this weekend, and then it's sunny for the entire weekend. It's
and then Ted's doing his notebook with an umbrella.
Oh, there's spots of rain. Spots of rain. Oh, is there, Ted? Is there?
No, it's always post-race. He gets out there, then he has an umbrella and it's windy and there's all sorts of weather an hour after.
Yeah, well.
Yes, no. But I did want to mention as well, I think the Ferrari in general, I guess aside the issues that happened to Carlos, but that seemed to me more just kind of general operational errors than a strategy kind of thing. I think they've shown this year that the clown gear is truly sold on eBay and long gone out of their hands.
Yep.
So I think from that regard, even if something comes up and even if they start behind Max, but they can pull a bit of a blinder, undercut, overcut. Again, they're so good on their tires, so they can under or overcut. So it's hard to say, especially with their most recent performance in Melbourne, at least, to go with anyone else. That's probably the safest pick. But I'm glad for the two trickier picks.
Yep.
We've gone different. I was
fearing
that we were going to go...
I did consider just going Charles. I'm just like, it's fucking so boring.
I think we both shared a moment before we recorded and we're like, and then I'm like, no, okay, okay.
Yeah, so, like I said, for those listening on Spotify, let us know or if you're watching on YouTube and you prefer to do it this way, tweet your predictions at our Twitter at FinalSectorYT. If you are watching on YouTube, you can leave them in the comments below. We'd very much love to see if you have any other opinions. But yeah, that's our thoughts on the Imola Grand Prix. I think it's going to be a really fascinating one to watch. I'm very curious to see if this sprint format and the extension of points sort of does increase, that, or does mean that sort of midfield will fight a little bit harder for those points in those positions. So if that's all from you, we'll wrap this one up. But thank you all for listening and watching, and we'll see you after the Imola race. Enjoy, and we'll see you next week. Take care all.
Ciao.